Didi Manzanares Ibarra, Tribal Chair of Rumsinama Turatai Ohlone.
And the Ohlone people used to be occupying this land.
Yes, they were. They were the Ramaytush people that occupied this land. My tribe, the Rumsin Ohlone, were down in Monterey, Carmel area.
And you're here tonight. There's a discussion about murals of Arnautoff. What is your view on that?
My view is there is no place for them. I went and took a look at them earlier at the high school, and there is no place for them here in this area. They don't even depict anything that has to do with a local high school there other than the name, George Washington. The murals have nothing saying what they're about. They are just there.
Are you saying there's no information about the murals at that?
No information.
Saying about what it is?
That's correct. No plaque, no story, no nothing. They're just there on the walls.
That's pretty strange, isn't it? Because they have a lot of history and everything else. Not to have any kind of information about them?
Exactly, and that's what I thought. I said, I guess you just leave it to your imagination, I guess. That's the way it seemed to me, and the pictures that were there, it's like, and they've been there since the 30s, 1930s?
50s. Or 40s.
I thought
40s.
it was part of the work project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the murals, Richard Arnautoff was a communist. He was against racism, and he worked with Diego Rivera in Mexico, and he also has murals in Rincon Annex of Chinese workers being exploited. The history of California, the genocide that took place against Chinese Americans and Native Americans. Do you think that he was trying to say that in his art?
If he was trying to say it, I don't think there was enough of it to really depict that. For the few natives that were shown, and the way it seemed, it was just like a stereotypical native, not even one that would have been around this area. It just, like I said, it doesn't make sense. The pictures that were there and the different locations and Washington sitting with Martha Washington, and if that was Martha.
Also as a slave owner. I mean, Washington was a slave owner. People don't even know that, and that's...
Right, there was a slave owner. It looked like he could have been buying slaves and putting them into a wagon. I don't know. It didn't explain anything.
Okay.
Very, very demeaning to people,
Okay. How many people are there in your tribe?
Our tribe, personally, it's more of a family. Our tribe is a clan, and there may be 50 to 70 right now. Mm-hmm.
So is there a cultural center or history center about your people in this area?
No, there's not.
I mean, there should be.
There should be, absolutely, and that is one of the things.
Maybe they can have it at the school. I mean, I think high school students need to learn about history.
For many years, people thought the Ohlone didn't exist anymore, so, maybe because of the mural, I don't know.
But they're back.
Right, we're back and we're strong, we're not going anywhere. We've actually always been here, just that people didn't know we existed. It wasn't until 1972 that Freedom of Religion Act, we could share our culture, we could share our stories and our ceremonies out in public. So, yeah, we're here and we're not going anywhere.
So you have a sign, confront history, do not erase it. Who destroys the artwork? The Taliban, Nazis, the Cultural Revolution of China.
Kathy G.
So there's a big debate here. What's going on?
I'm an alumnus of Washington and graduated in the 70s. And at that time, in the 60s, there was a lot of discussion about these murals. Who was up there? There are 13 of them, I believe, and there are 2 that have some offensive spots in it. There's an Indian who is dead. You don't see any blood. And there are slaves, purportedly black, working in a field. And
I think that was Washington's field, his plantation.
Probably, yeah. It's about the life of Washington. So people were very upset about it then. There were a lot of demonstrations and stuff. And a compromise was reached where other murals were added to show accomplishments of other people, other races.
Like Dewey, the artist Dewey.
Yeah. And I think you don't erase history. You don't try and cover it up. You just learn from it. And things were wrong, but it's not the shame of the Indian that's portrayed or of the slaves that are portrayed. It's Washington's part of his shame, along with the good things he did.
Some of the people who want to remove the mural are arguing that they went over there and there's no information there apparently about even what it's about. I mean, is that a concern that there's no information about
Put up information. I mean, we went through this, and I don't know why the schools have not publicized what was happened back in 1960s.
the present day students would know what this is about.
What we went through already, and they could see that there's more to it than just a picture on a wall.
So you're for the mural staying?
Yes, I don't think you should ever erase it. You have to remember what happened so that we don't repeat and we learn from it.
No destruction of art.
It's not just the art, it's the history. You don't destroy concentration camps, you don't forget the relocation camps of Japanese Americans, because we don't want that to happen again, and it can.
My name is Antonio Gonzalez with American Indian Movement West, based here in San Francisco, an intertribal human rights organization.
And tonight they're going to be discussing the removal of the murals at George Washington High School, pro-con, the points of view. What's your view on this?
Well, I also represent within the American Indian Movement the National Coalition Against Racism in Sports and the Media, and this falls under that category of removing all these images, whether in sports, public school mascots, statues such as here in San Francisco several months back, the removal of the Pioneer Days, and so this mural falls in line with that, particularly seeing an image of a dead Indian with white people walking over it, etc. That doesn't show any respect or good values, especially a projection of San Francisco. I would rather, as American Indian Movement, as we've proposed, that there be what's called an interpretive center, which is like parallel, Steve, to a museum.
Couldn't that be at the school?
Interpretive center. Well, I would want to connect that to San Francisco not having an intertribal Indian indigenous cultural center. We are the only people.
But couldn't that be at the school? They're going to spend $1 million to remove it.
I don't know if the schools would want the space, but this is why I'm saying.
I mean, it sounds like
we would provide a space. If we had a cultural center, we would provide a space, an interpretive center or room space, to bring in all these statues, images, mascots, T-shirts, baseball team caps, everything to show an era of racism that has to come to an end.
Do you think Richard Arnautoff was a racist? He's the painter of that?
No, I respect the man, the Russian man that he is, and did the artwork commissioned by the WPA, which was a strong instrument providing work and all that. But regardless whether he's even considered progressive for having instituted several movements in his time, still we are in an age where young people of this era now do not appreciate it and find it disgusting, and it's time for its removal. And that's why we're here to support that. And rather throw it away or cover it, put it in a
what about
center.
Okay, what about the Rincon Annex? Because there are murals there of Chinese workers, their exploitation, and other workers there. Do you think they should be removed at the Rincon?
No, that sounds good as well.
So they should be removed too?
In an interpretive location where people can really see the image in its true form.
Okay, well, the city, I mean,
outside the city as it is today.
the school doesn't have the money, they say, to do it, so they're going to either destroy it or put a curtain over it, costing $800,000. Do you think that money could be spent really by educating students about the history?
Yes, it's always a dilemma of whether to include money or cut back on monies, and that's why they're elected officials. Hopefully, they'll see through commonsensically that it's time to remove this, and then from there, with a political will, more towards some resolution to provide for both the students and the faculty, the alumni in particular, and the whole city, and that is to remove.
Yeah, some of these board members I heard have not even gone there and seen the murals. It's kind of hard to believe.
U.S. congressional and senators, representative, they have budgets that they don't read themselves, including the military authorizing budgets that are not read, So I'm not surprised. So it's going to, if it goes on sheer instinct and will, we're going to give them the best emotional expression we can for removal.
Have you seen the murals yourself?
Yes, I have. Yes, I
It
have.
shows kind of Western imperialism going west and taking over the lands. I mean,
This falls in line with the images that we sought to remove Junipero Serra in our very romantic images and murals.
this wasn't romantic. This showed the Washington and the imperialists going to the west.
Well,
That was what the mural shows, that they're trying to invade the west. That's what the United States was doing.
romantic in the sense of white imperialism, that it will pursue and proceed, and ultimately what came down to manifest destiny. That's what those images
That's what it is.
represent.
Yeah.
It's nothing of respect to people of color, whether African, Asian, or Indian peoples.
Well, it shows the slavery, that Washington was a slaveholder. People don't know that. I mean,
It could
is
be
that
done
something
in better taste, for example.
You don't think he's such a good artist?
We have to move on. He's a brilliant artist. I'm not disrespecting or denying his quality, especially having been taught under the auspices of Diego Rivera. You know, who's to condemn that?
That was his student.
But we are in a learning curve here of decolonization. We're in the era of removing statues and flags and images and changing mascots in public schools, and this is no different. And if the Indian people are saying enough is enough, then the public should be aware and adhere to that.
Socialist Workers Party candidate for mayor of San Francisco. I'm speaking in opposition to the destruction of the Life of Washington mural at George Washington High School. I join with others, including members of the school's Alumni Association, in opposing the destruction of the mural portraying the life of George Washington. Destroying or covering it would be an act of censorship and a blow to freedom of expression that would set a precedent for further such actions. The charge that the mural is a glorification of slavery and the genocide of Native Americans is false. In portraying George Washington, Victor Arnautoff sought to present him with all his contradictions, someone who played a leading role in the American Revolution, while at the same time owning slaves and pushing for settlement of Western lands that led to the genocide of Native Americans. Censorship creates precedents.
My name is Lope Yap, Jr. I'm the Vice President of the George Washington High School Alumni Association. I was a panelist and the lone dissenter regarding Whitewash Victor Arnautoff's murals. I was the only panelist that offered and considered proactive answers to face but not erase our history. I want to thank the First Nation community for raising real emotional issues. Hopefully we can work together in solving those issues. Through education led by WPA, PWA, history, and most importantly, art experts, those who question Arnautoff's work will hopefully appreciate his artistic value, that he was an ally and never glorified the enslaved, mistreated, and/or oppressed. For example, prior to the unveiling ceremony of Dewey Crumpler's 1974 response murals, several African American alumni students apologized to Crumpler and also to Arnautoff. Excuse me. Their reason? If they knew then, in the late 1960s, what they learned from Crumpler in creating the response murals, their reaction would have been much different than to demonstrate, riot, or vandalize the Arnautoff murals. I have many issues with the Reflection and Action Group, with the mission, structure, its work, incomplete, flawed, potential procedural irregularities, and very slanted from the beginning of the 4 meetings. As a result, I recommend that the final vote regarding the Arnautoff murals be delayed for 30 months. I have numerous examples to support my concerns, but I will not elaborate due to time constraints. I'm also very concerned that all protocols regarding CEQA and CAPA have and or will be completely satisfied. As you know, retired California Historic Preservation Officer Carol Rowland Nawi has also addressed your obligations regarding CEQA protocols. As a result, I request that the district prepare an environmental impact report in order to comply with mandates of CEQA. Removal of the mural from the high school may have a significant environmental impact on a unique and important aesthetic, visual, cultural, and historic resource of the city of San Francisco and the state of California. An EIR will study the environmental impact and identify feasible alternatives and mitigation measures that would lessen or avoid the significant environmental impact. Many support our position to preserve the Arnautoff and Crumpler murals. I will only name a few. George Washington High School Alumni Association, over 6,000 members. Dewey Crumpler, African-American, 1974 response mural artist. Matt Gonzalez, former San Francisco supervisor, public defender, and artist. Barth, Chief Eagle Robinson of the Rosebud Sioux Tribe. Robert Tamaka Bailey, the Choctaw Elder. National Coalition Against Censorship, which represents 56 organizations throughout the country. William Minez, head of the City College of San Francisco Diego Rivera Project. Yuri Ivanenko, who represents a Russian commission of artists in Russia. The Russian Community Petition Letter with over 1,046 signatories. Nomisha Williams, an African-American and art historian who works for the National Park Service. Gray Brecken, WPA deal expert. Robert Cherney, Victor Arnautoff biographer. Editors from the San Francisco Chronicle, the Wall Street Journal. At the Presidio, there's currently a Japanese internment exhibit. I'll just refer to one line. Many who lived through the experience of the camps, as well as their families, remain determined to share their stories in order to educate the public and to ensure that nothing of this sort even happens again. When you finally decide to vote, hopefully you'll delay, will you be on the right side of history or embrace censorship and join the dark side of history? Thank you very much.
I'm Annette Melville. I was the art librarian at the Library of Congress. I live and vote in San Francisco. I was born here too. In the Reflection Group's report, I did not see any mention of the monetary worth of the Arnautoff frescoes. How much are they worth? I asked a retired art dealer, and he said priceless. So let's learn from the experience of UC Berkeley, an institution that carelessly treated WPA art and had to pay for it later. Berkeley lost track of a screen carved by Sergeant Johnson, the Harlem Renaissance artist who did the frieze for the George Washington's football field. The sculpture was put in storage and eventually sold as surplus for $165. When Berkeley realized its mistake, it tried to buy back the sculpture, but it had already been sold to the Huntington Library. The value was estimated at over $1 million. UCB was widely criticized. Arnautoff worked on the George Washington project for a year as his largest surviving mural. He studied with Mexican muralist Diego Rivera and supervised the frescoes at Coit Tower, and is our city's link with the Mexican mural tradition. His papers are at the Smithsonian. I won't embarrass you by asking if you've visited the murals yourself and looked at them with care. I just request that you look at them before you vote. If you vote against, you will be destroying a masterpiece.
Okay. My name is Amy Meyer. I was formerly an art teacher. And I care very much about those murals because they are most remarkable and give the opportunity to give an art education experience that can hardly take place anywhere else. It's the history of George Washington ranging from the cherry tree to Valley Forge. But then that history gets interpreted and reinterpreted over the years, and the layers are there to see or to learn about. We have a tremendously valuable resource there, and it should be worked fully into the curriculum of George Washington High School. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Stephen Chun. I'm with the Alumni Association. You have our packets. Thank you for your time. I'm reading on behalf of Dewey Crumpler. He's the impressionist that painted the other murals on the other side of the lobby. So what can we do to deal with the students' concerns? Students today read metaphors and symbols differently than we did. The fact that arts education is rarely taught has contributed to this lack of understanding. Murals are hard to read, but students would respond if they got an opportunity to learn about them. The murals, after all, are beautiful educational tools. My point is that art reveals the tensions in society. Censoring it won't address these tensions. A better solution is to give students a way to express themselves and learn from history. Protect the murals as the law demands. The school should consider removing the Washington statue in the entry hall and create a video kiosk that tells the story of the murals, highlighting certain scenes for deeper explication and where students can post their own stories and discuss our ever-evolving views of the past and present. Thank you.
My name is Andrea Murral. I'm a longtime resident of the Bay Area and a member of the Socialist Workers' Party. There's a trend today among liberals and even some who claim to be socialists of attacks on freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of artistic expression. The attempt to destroy the mural at Washington High School is part of this destructive trend, in this case in the name of shielding Native American and African American youth from harm. But effacing this mural and similar acts have nothing to do with the fight to eradicate exploitation and racial oppression. Instead, they undermine the fight. Battles for social and economic justice need to be waged in this country. And we face powerful enemies who profit from the inequality in this society and aren't about to let it go. We need the most robust freedom of ideas to discuss, debate what will be effective and what will not. We cannot allow it to become a norm that some of us can decide for all of us which ideas, whether words or images, are acceptable and which have to be suppressed.
My name is Raul Gonzalez. In 1969 and 1970, I was a student at Mission High School in San Francisco. I was active in the fight against the war in Vietnam, and I was active in the fight for Chicano rights. Myself and one other formed the first organization citywide on the high schools in San Francisco against the war in Vietnam. The mural tells in part the story of the conquest and colonization of the United States, including the genocide of Native Americans. The mural reminds us that this nation was born in blood and gore. The mural also tells of the creations of this world's first victorious anti-colonial revolution. That was the American Revolution, a revolution that inspired similar revolutions throughout the Americas against Spain. The artist that painted the mural at George Washington High School was inspired by the muralism that was born with the Mexican Revolution of 1910. He worked with Diego Rivera, whose murals portrayed the oppression of indigenous people.
Good afternoon, my name is Toba Singer. I'm a retired senior co-director of the San Francisco Public Library Art and Music Center. And I want to say that art is a cultural expression and often the only record of social history for working people. That history is drenched in blood. The price we pay for standing up to wrench any modicum of power and dignity from the exploiting class. It's of no consequence whether we call the call to disguise that fact comes from the so-called left or right. The antiseptic outcome is the same. Our true history is sanitized, distorted, wholly erased. This time to assuage those who claim to be more evolved in their sensibilities, but ultimately serving to wipe out the true record of the class that exploits and oppresses. As a worker, as a librarian, I oppose the censorship attack on the artistic patrimony of San Francisco, including against its children, and specifically those of the working class, the most oppressed of its members. We have a right to know our social origins as much from the art as through the oral history and written word. Thank you.
I'm Lydia Zaviruha, a native San Franciscan and a first-generation Russian American. I'm co-author of the book Russian San Francisco, and I'm the daughter of a civilian survivor of Nazi forced labor camps. You're going to get a copy of the Russian Community Council's petition to preserve Arnautoff's murals in place, signed by more than 1,000 people from all over the world, including Russia and Israel. The petition notes that the murals protest the genocide of Native Americans, First Peoples, and the slavery and oppression of African Americans at a time when few in the U.S. dared discuss these tragedies. Parts of the murals cause profound pain. I feel a lot of pain too. You may hear it in my voice now. For your potential decision may wipe away the legacy of a Russian-American immigrant artist. Arnautoff's murals may be one-of-a-kind works for the time, the 1930s, I remind you, you all well know. Given his critical rendering of Washington, in our inclusive city, The contribution of Russian Americans, itself a group often overlooked and oppressed, vilified in media, can be destroyed by this act of misplaced retribution.
Thank you.
Erasing part of our heritage. Please, let's find a compromise, balancing the past wrongs without a wrong of today. Thank you.
Oh, my name's Richard Rothman. I graduated George Washington. And I did go to all 4 of the Reflections Committee meetings. And while I thought they could have improved, the educational part was very interesting. I really learned a lot. I was sorry that there were not a wider audience and the committee meetings were not advertised more. I had a hard time finding out about the meetings. And I think this lady from Santa Rosa who conducted the meetings should be brought back and to give her talks in a wider audience there. The report that staff presented, Heritage also sent some other solutions to this issue. You might want to look at it. The principal has let me give tours of the murals at George Washington, and I invite you all to come out and see the murals for yourself and the other artwork in the building. Washington has really a great art treasure. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. I'm Rick Tejada Flores. I'm a filmmaker and former general manager of KIOW Radio. The question before you tonight is not erasing the murals or preserving them. The question is who owns history? History, as you know, is written by the conquerors. This history of our country was. I doubt if you can find another mural in a public building anywhere in this country that shows George Washington as a slave owner. That was then, this is now. We've moved along, we can say more things. What happened then needs to be addressed. But the people who need to address it are the students, because that's the educational process. It can be done in many ways. I did a quick sketch that I want to show you, which would involve putting a plastic screen over the mural, focusing on what's important in the mural, i.e. black faces and George Washington, and setting the record straight. George Washington was one of 12 presidents who had slaves. That isn't taught in school either. This is how you teach things. You look at it, you comment on it. Thank you.
My name is Harvey Smith. I'm president of the National New Deal Preservation Association. I'm also a scholar of New Deal art. I've done a great number of tours and presentations on the murals of San Francisco. I also work with the Art Commission to write new signage for Coit Tower. So I know it's quite possible to interpret artworks. I also know that people, when they look at art, they have questions. And I think it's a bit demeaning to think that students, being a former Oakland Unified teacher, that high school students cannot understand a thoughtful interpretation. So this is San Francisco. So this is not Germany in the 1930s. This is not the Soviet Union. So I urge all of you to look at this more broadly, look at the context, look at the art, look at the intentions of the artist, and understand the context that the art was created in. So step up, please.
My name is Tamanka. I'm a teacher of the Oklahoma Choctaw language. I'm against taking those murals down for one reason only. It's a history. It's a visual proven fact that
Excuse me,
it's a proven fact that George Washington was partaking in a genocide of our people. It's depicted in those pictures. Just like Eisenhower commissioned to take pictures of the Holocaust to prove that this really happened. That's what those murals represent as a Native person. It shows he was one who was involved in getting rid and genociding our First Nation people. He was a slave owner. How are you going to prove that if you take those down? By word of mouth? That's not going to work, because we already see where we're at now, just by saying these things happened.
My name's Paul Judge. I'm a graduate of Washington, 1968. I was a member of Colin Covey's social studies class, in which Roosevelt Thomas and myself and other classmates, Roosevelt was the BSU president at the time, discussed this matter. This is 1968. please remember what was going on. We talked about the struggle against the war in Vietnam. Martin Luther King was murdered. Robert Kennedy is murdered. Dewey Crumpler is correct. There is a poverty of education in this matter that goes through the school system. My father, at 8 years of age, when I was 8 years of age, took me through that lobby. And as a longshoreman with a San Francisco high school education, pointed out the poignant scenes. It's apparent.
My name is Marianne Phillip, and I have been a teacher at Washington High School for over 20 years. I'm also currently the librarian at Washington. I had a little difficulty when they asked me whether I was for or against covering up the murals, because I don't feel like there's been enough discussion, enough education, enough time to really treat this important issue the way it needs to be treated. I didn't find out about that there was going to be a committee until our principal said, hey, we need some students for this committee. And I'm like, what committee? It was going to be a closed committee of only 11 people, and then they opened it up for the public to come. I was at 3 of those 4 meetings. One meeting I was sick, so I couldn't attend. However, at the beginning of this discussion, it was said that the community overwhelmingly supports covering the murals, but I don't know that we've overwhelmingly heard from the whole community. And that's what really concerns me about this process.
My name is Elizabeth Shippard. I am from the Washington graduation class of 1970, and we talked about this. This was a theme that came up then, and I just had such a hard time realizing that it's back, rearing its ugly head. And this is history, and we should learn from history, not cover it up. Thank you.
My name is Larry Monsbach, graduate of Washington High School, first generation San Francisco. Both of my parents are Holocaust survivors. They're very proud of General Eisenhower, who not only ordered photographs of the concentration camps, but filming of the horror of the concentration camps. In the case of Washington High School murals, Victor Arnautoff had the choice. He could have given the lie of George Washington on his land chopping down a cherry tree. Instead, he decided to tell the truth. Tell the truth. Mr. President, I heard your words at the beginning of this session from Sojourner Truth. The truth will set you free.
Hello, my name is Frank Triska. My son, who now works in China, is a product of this district. In Charter High School, he learned about the evils of the Holocaust. That's a heavy load for a 16-year-old, but then history is not all bunting and parades. He invited a friend, a colleague who graduated from Chinese University to visit us recently. This young man knows nothing about what happened in Tiananmen Square 30 years ago. In China, embarrassing truths are actively sanitized from history, and graphic images are actively destroyed. I do not believe the Chinese way is appropriate for San Francisco. I do believe that parents embarrassed by some truths of American history, such as that George Washington owned slaves or that Native Americans have been consistently mistreated, should have the option to transfer their children to schools in a more sanitized environment. I also believe that educators willing to literally paint out inconvenient truths of American history are cheating their students of a comprehensive and ethically based education.
My name is Donna Parker. My mother was an American Indian. Her reservation was given blankets with TB spores in the 1920s. She died of lung cancer because she couldn't have chemo because of those spores. I never was taught that in school, and I went through the public schools in San Francisco. In San Francisco, we should be teaching about the mural and what it means. I, as a half Native American Indian, see no problem with the mural. It depicts what happened. Everything was whitewashed when I went through school. You know, Native American lives matter. Black lives matter. Every life matters, but you have to know the history.
My name is Betsy Stone. This has been posed, are you for the art or are you for the students? I think if the mural is erased, both will lose. It's a question of precedence above all. Once you start censorship, art, speech, whatever, it ends up hitting most the working people, the most oppressed. We have to remember when they tried to censor the earlier murals, what they wanted to censor, the labor struggles, the workers murdered by police. It came from the right wing. We, as working people, do not control this country or the school system. We stop fighting for the freedom to speak, and we drop the...
Steve Zeltzer, United Public Workers for Education. First of all, to allow only an hour for all of us to discuss this is wrong. We should at least have 2 hours. But what I find astounding, and I asked some of the supporters of taking down the mural, is that there's no information at Washington High about what these murals are. How could that be? That there's no explanation? That's on you. That's on this Board of Education. Why hasn't there been education about these murals? No wonder the students are unhappy. I mean, I think you have to learn about it. Frankly, what I'm in favor of is a Native American Cultural Center at the school to have education about the murals and the real history. Instead of spending $1 million and millions more if there's a suit fighting this, let's have some real education. And frankly, the school district and the superintendent have allowed racism in San Francisco. They allowed bullying at Martin Luther King Junior High School, middle school. They allowed the breakup of Malcolm X Academy with the KIPP charter. That's racism, right here in San Francisco. And where was this Board of Education there? Where were they fighting the privatization and the busting, the racist attacks on the schools?
My name is George Wright, and I'm a professor emeritus from California State University, Chico. Taught political science for about 34 years there. Started teaching black politics in the United States back in 1968. And I've been living in San Francisco the last 16 years. I want to associate myself with every remark that's been made on this side of the aisle today. What I just simply want to add is kind of an academic perspective to this. I associate myself with a group of historians and political scientists coming out of the late 50s and into the 60s. Kenneth Stamp, Eugene Genovese, obviously W.E.B. Du Bois, Lerone Bennett, etc., who attempted to revise history to tell the truth about what happened in history. When I went to school, George Washington had just simply chopped down a cherry tree. It took me until I became a professor and I had to read books and learn what real history was about that I learned the truth. Thank you.
My name is Susan Ives. I'm representing the Living New Deal at UC Berkeley. Sensibilities and sensitivities change over time. And I took a little time this morning to make a list of some of the books that had been banned, burned, or censored over the years by different boards of education. And I just want to read a few of them to you. 1984 by George Orwell, A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, The Absolutely True Diary of a True Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, Alice's Adventure in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll, Animal Farm by George Orwell, Black Boy by Richard Wright, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, The Canterbury Tales by Chaucer, Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, The Color Purple by Alice Walker, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. I don't think that's where you want to be.
My name is Peggy Toy. I graduated from George Washington High School. Last month I attended a symposium about the Chinese contributions to the Transcontinental Railway. They were excluded from the official picture when the railway was created back in 1869. At the 100th anniversary at 1969, they were given 5 minutes to present about the Chinese contribution. That 5 minutes was given away. Last month, finally, the Chinese were recognized for their contributions to U.S. history. It took 150 years for the government to recognize them publicly. They were erased. That was my issue with the murals. You're erasing history. I would welcome murals of Chinese contributing to the Transcontinental Railway or about the Japanese internment camps. We need to know the history and have it in our face.
I'm Cindy Salins Rosenheim, graduate of George Washington High School and a commercial illustrator. Just these words, eradicate, whitewash, destroy, bury. In 1968, 69, 70, 71, 72, the spirit of reacting to those murals that caused a lot of pain was to add, was to create, was to talk back in the medium that, in the same medium. And so we enriched the school, we enriched the conversation, and now we have the Crumpler murals as a response. And now we're 20 years later, and there's still blank walls in the vicinity of where those two wonderful sets of murals are. And why not add? Why not do a contemporary response?
My name is Didi Manzanares Ibarra. I'm tribal chair of Rumson Ohlone. And I'm here tonight because I took a little tour of the Washington murals this afternoon. And what I felt going through there was that it didn't make any sense to me. There was nothing there telling me a story, telling me what was going on. I just took a little tour there. Nothing depicting what those pictures meant. And as I listened to all the speakers that were here, everybody seems to be in a rush to now tell the story. Well, you've had many, many years to tell the story. Hasn't happened until finally somebody wants to cover these murals up, which I think they should be because they have no place there. I heard from someone when I did a live presentation that in 1975 there was an effort to take them down. And I was told in 1975 there was a couple of Native students that attended Washington High School, and they also were joined by some African American students. They attempted to have these murals taken down then, and at the time they were shot down, and the one Native American student was asked to leave 6 months ahead of time. So there was a movement going on back then. He couldn't believe it's still happening now. So this is nothing new. That was going on. So wherever these alumni have been, if I don't see any purpose on those murals being there without telling a story. You've had, if all your 6,000 alumni or whatever you have in your group has had a chance, you've had a chance, now give us a chance to tell the real history, to tell our history, because it's time.
Hi, my name is Kai Anderson Lawson. I'm a student at George Washington High School, and I'm here to stand up against the racist and demeaning Life of Washington murals. It's very hard to walk past these murals depicting the racist stories of America's founding father, even if it is the truth. Even then, there are historical inaccuracies depicted in the murals themselves. The fact that they're in the lobby of a public high school is enough to say that something is wrong. I've talked to many people, and kids don't see these images as helpful or powerful for school. They see them as insulting and demeaning based on the images depicted. Plaques will not help this. It will only pose as a reminder of suffering, which changes a whole day into a painful one. Generational trauma follows us, no matter how big the mural is, and no one needs that amplified, no matter who you are. If our school district seeks out social justice, just as much as Washington High School itself, then we will paint over these murals or cover them, but hopefully replace them with better representation. They will have safer images on the walls, not to cover up the past.
Today is a good day to Bonjour, Anin, Nikanagana. I am Amy Anderson, Akamimo and Métis in Ojibwe, and in my Ojibwe language, that is hello, I see you, all my relations. Thank you for hearing me on this unceded land of the Ohlone. Today is a good day to take down a racist mural! Especially because today is my birthday, and my birthday wish is to whitewash Washington. Yeah, I said it. But really, it is because the mural is already depicting a whitewashed history where everything within it was based on the story and the telling and the writing of people who are white, not any one of us who are people of color. Today is a good day to be racially and socially conscious, to be woke. On the eve of Juneteenth, it is time for us to recognize the pain inflicted on all of us who are depicted within that mural. It's not in a museum, it's inside a school. Our students, all of them, deserve better. I see nothing Juneteenth about that mural. A black slave shucking corn. Female black slaves bent over picking cotton in a field. Nothing Juneteenth about it. The students deserve better. Are you kidding me? Today is a good day, as hopeful as I am, to end white supremacy. To pay it forward to all of us who are misrepresented and abused in those mural panels. We Indigenous people are not exotic people of paint and feathers to be ogled at. We are not savages, and all the real Indians are not dead.
My name is Jasmine, and I am from San Francisco, and a parent of San Francisco Unified School of 10 children. And I just wanted to say today, well, first of all, it's not nothing to do with censorship. It was painted in a time when our youth did not have books and articles at their hands, at their fingertips. And I am strongly for covering it up because it's hard enough for our young kids of color to be forced to wake up early and go into institutions where most of the teachers will never understand them as it is, only to have to walk through the main hall as a constant reminder of a very small part of our history, very small part that, you know, like she said, is whitewashed version. It's not something to be celebrated. It's almost a form of psychological oppression to have to put that on our kids every day. We should have something positive that reminds them how great they are, real quick, and just remind them to love themselves and encourage greatness in them.
My name is Mary Travis Helen. I am a mother and a grandmother of children that have gone through the school system here. I don't have to read in books about the insult of this history. I've lived that insult. I've been on the community committee. Why must we always struggle to have to explain why we are offended by those things that inflict injury on us? Why do we have to explain that the pain that is inflicted by retelling of lies in history or stereotype images of our people and nations? Why do we have to explain the pain caused by the visual offense that we see in that building that is supposed to be an institution for learning is wrong?
All of you. Jimmy Sunway, hello in Pitt River, Northern California, Indian woman. My name's Paloma Flores. I hold the role as a program coordinator for SFUSD's Indian Education Program. Biwai Nam Ish Waikatuchi Ayatuni Ish. In Pitt River, I say to you, our people are still here. To echo what my grandmother had just said, this is a lived experience. No one has the right to tell us, as Native people, or our young people who walk those halls, how to feel. You're not in their shoes. You don't feel what they feel, unless you're living it. I'm a great-granddaughter of Daniel Webster, who was alive when it was still legal in the state of California to hunt and kill Native people. You say it's censorship. What about censorship when you dig up our belongings and you sell it to the highest bidder?
Board Commissioners, Mr. Superintendent, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Virginia Marshall. I represent the Alliance of Black School Educators and the NAACP. I join my colleagues here tonight with the removal of this racist mural. In the 1970s, my colleagues said in the BSU, came to the school board, said, take it down. Here we are, almost 50 years later, we're saying to you, take it down. It is a racist mural. My history should not be racist, but it is. I came from slaves, from slavery. That mural depicts slavery. That mural depicts the unfair treatment of my sisters and brothers who are Native Americans. There is no place, Mrs. Superintendent and Board of Commissioners, President Cook, for that mural to be in Washington High School or any public high school in the city. I'm also sad, as I sat there and listened to people come up before us, and I saw such lack of diversity. I thought to myself, if I had taught at Washington High School, if my kids went to Washington High School, they would not be welcome. And that really saddens me. Please take it down. Thank you.
My name is Barbara Mumpy, and I descend from the Concan Maidu people here in California, as well as the Algonquin Powhatan Confederacy on the East Coast, which this mural represents my people. What I find most disturbing is the lack of cultural competency in this mural, whether or not it's true or accurate to portray a Native person face down dead. You are trapping their spirit and their soul so they cannot move on. That is what I see. Our children deserve better. Our children deserve to come to a school where they feel honored and respected and they feel safe and that they are represented in the walls that they see. They don't deserve to come to a room where they have to witness the degradation and genocide of their people on a daily basis and be ignored while they speak out about it. Because that is what this mural has done. It has trapped us in an era of the past where we are now invisible and we no longer have a voice. This is not a new issue.
My name is Ariana Anton Ramirez. I'm an enrolled member of the Alumni Nation and a San Francisco Unified School District graduate. I graduated from Galileo in 2016. I would just like to point out that preserving these murals is telling a one-sided story of Native peoples without promoting positive Native history. And if you want to tell our history, tell something positive. Perhaps replace it with a mural of the first Native Congresswoman. Just food for thought. With regards to this issue, Native and Black voices should be prioritized, and there's no excuse for that, considering that our voices are so loud and adamantly telling you to take down these murals. I implore the Board of Education to consider the impact of these murals versus the intent. And last but not least, I will say that genocide is not an aesthetic to be preserved.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Anton. I'm from the Alumni Nation. I just simply want to say there is no reason whatsoever that these murals should be in our schools. It does not uplift our community. Our people have been through historical trauma, and I work at the Native American Health Center, so I deal with that every day, the effects of that historical trauma and how it affects our people. We should be ashamed of ourselves to have these murals in the school. Not only those murals, but the name of that school needs to be changed. Let's put one of our Native heroes up there, uplifting our people. None of our students, not just Native students or African American students, none of our students should be exposed to murals like that in a public school in San Francisco. So take the murals down, do the right thing.
My name is Antonio Gonzalez with American Indian Movement West, based here in San Francisco, and I also represent the National Coalition Against Racism in Sports and Media. And we've heard all these arguments for keeping images and gestures and statues like this over the years. And we've also gotten threats by alumni of the past, for removing mascots, that they will cut back on funding toward other sources within the school district. And we are in an era of change, of decolonization, deprogramming our communities, something more health and well-being and the images that we portray. So on behalf of American Indian Movement West and National Coalition Against Racism in Sports, we also want this removed immediately, regardless of the well-intentions of the artist. Thank you.
Oh yeah, my name is April McGill. I'm the director of the American Indian Cultural Center here in San Francisco. I'm also an enrolled member of Round Valley. I'm Yuki, Little Lake, Pomo, and Wailaki. I have a son who is also a student in the San Francisco School District, born and raised. I want to first say that I acknowledge our Ohlone ancestors, and I want to say thank you to the Ohlone ancestors for allowing me to speak before them today. If you support this mural, you have a colonized mentality. If you are Latino and you support this, you are colonized. If you are African American, you are colonized. If you are Native American, you are colonized. And you have a responsibility to your ancestors to end this racism. The historical trauma is real. Generational trauma is real. Our students have to see this mural and they have to relive that trauma. Our children should not have to. I'm tired of old white people telling me about my history.
So it's Rihanna Batiste with the African American Parent Advisory Council. And this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. My oldest son graduated from WASH in 2016. And those murals do not reflect the experience that he had. The 4 years that he had at WASH were some of the best of his life and my life. And I implore you to take it down. We don't need to constantly see images that show us of being weak and show us of being in the struggle. We know that already. We need something that exemplifies the greatness that we exemplify every single day. Our babies come from brilliance, and this for all our children, and they need to see that. That is what they need. My daughter will be starting in WASH in August. I want her to see images that's going to make her proud to be an African American woman, to walk those halls and know that she is going to graduate at the top of her class.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie. I'm 16 years old and I currently attend City Arts and Tech High School. And I feel like you should remove the murals because there is a difference between educating our students about the history of George Washington, what wasn't they having that is cultural traumatic. And 99% of indigenous people were eradicated during the colonization of this land. Seeing images this offensive only originates the intergenerational trauma so many students of color are working to work and heal from.
My name is Alondra, and I am from the Jamestown community. And I'm here for removing the murals because as history grows, we see that it is more ugly, and we get taught that. Yet there's only being no history being taught, and there's only white supremacy being glorified. San Francisco just made history this year by removing the early days statue. Let us continue to progress forward by removing these murals.
My name is Beatriz Herrera. I'm here with SFUSD. We're an alliance of grassroots community organizations, including Coleman Advocates for Children and Youth. And I'm also an educator at City College in San Francisco. And we want to implore you to seriously consider removing this mural. You're hearing from families, you're hearing from Native elders, you're hearing from youth that are saying that this mural is offensive, that this affects their participation in school and in their education. And this is a moment to really recognize their leadership and recognize that we're in a new moment in history. This mural was created almost 100 years ago. And maybe at that time, that mural was radical. But it isn't anymore. Currently, when I look at that mural and I see that Native American man facing the other way without a name, without a face, I see the only person in that mural that actually looks like me with dark skin and dark hair. And that's the impact murals like this have on people like us. So think about it.
I'm Dr. Shelley Peary. I'm a licensed psychologist with a practice here in San Francisco, and I'm also the mother of a Native American child, and I support removing this mural. I want to speak to the impact versus the intent of the mural's images. Just hear the pain in this room. All of these people talking about how painful it is to face these images. No one in this room, no one would say that we should put R-rated images on our school walls. This mural belongs in a museum, sell it for millions of dollars, and use the money to have some uplifting images. The science is in. These images are definitely detrimental to the children's self-esteem and also to their ability to learn. But you know what else? It affects all the white children with their implicit biases being nurtured by these images. Just as the last speaker was talking about, they feel invisible and this is how these implicit biases get made.
My name is Bo Woodson. I am NUA, that's Western Shoshone for the people. I'm here today, I work with the Indian Education Program, and I'm here to support the removal of the murals. They are offensive. They show that the Native people do not exist and that they are dead and it doesn't belong here. They are inaccurate to history and they teach a story that isn't true. They also are they're really demeaning to the people here. And you all need to think about the voices that have been heard. And you need to think, are you going to ignore those voices? Or are you going to throw them a bone of this little side mural in another, alleyway or whatever in the school? Or are you actually going to listen to the community here and show them some respect that they all deserve? And you know what? If you want to give them a mural, to help uplift them, you can still do that. You can do both things.
My name is Celestina Pearl. I'm a SFUSD parent to a 10-year-old child who goes to Buena Vista Horace Mann. I am Cherokee and Arapaho and also Mexican. I would like to say that this mural does not have any place in a world where we believe in the healing of all of us. Many years ago in my healing process, I read a book called Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. One of the concepts in that always struck with me very much was that when a person is unable to see themselves in a healing light and to see themselves as empowered and victorious, their healing process goes on for so much longer, and oftentimes a person is never able to truly heal from the traumas that they have gone through. Our children need to see themselves as empowered and victorious.
My name is Brandy Markman. I'm the parent of a child at Sutro Elementary School in the Richmond District. I'm also a member of Richmond District Rising. I attended public meetings about this mural that the Reflection and Action Committee had. My son might go to this high school one day, and I read an article that was written in 1968, and I know it's still said today. There is a horrible thing that students say at this school. I'll meet you at the Dend Indian, referring to the painting of the corpse of a Native American man who was killed. As a white parent, I want my son who is white to have an anti-racist outlook and to go to a school where he sees his black and indigenous peers feeling loved, honored, and treasured. This mural contains images of horrible stereotypes, and I do not want my son to internalize these stereotypes. This mural was painted in the 1930s, and today in elementary school and SFUSD, students do learn that George Washington was a slaveholder and that he was a part of really horrible things. So it's really redundant to teach it at the high school level. Please take down this mural and paint over it.
My name is Madi. I'm a parent of this child I'm holding. I'm also a voting member of the Reflection Action Committee. I come to you today with lots of feelings and emotions to kindly ask you all to please paint over that mural. We want a clean slate. We want to start over. And if you're wondering, what are you going to do with a mural that doesn't depict genocide and slavery? Don't worry. If you go to the library of that same exact high school, there's a mural that depicts that. We didn't vote to take that down. We only voted for the one in the front where every student has to come. I look at the majority of you, school board commissioners, and the majority of you come from bloodlines and ancestry that is depicted in that mural. And I know that some part of you deep down inside knows that you want to destroy that narrative. And so I'm asking us to be bold, to be courageous. We're a new school district. It's not business as usual. Let's paint over. That priceless, that healing that we would get is numerous.
Good evening. My name is Peter Lauderborn. I'm here in part in my capacity as president of the Richmond District Democratic Club, a club that includes many teachers from Washington High School and educators and SF natives, and we're all really proud to stand with our friends here in support of the removal of the mural. The idea that because somebody painted something one day and every student thereafter has to pass that forever, is insane. That's not education. Murals have always been kind of a piece of propaganda. They're very public political pieces. And they were maybe trying to tell a story at the time, but we know better now. We can do so much better now. You want education. Many of the people here calling for this to be removed have been here for years also fighting for ethnic studies and better curriculum and empowerment for students and teachers to be able to tell their own stories and break from the history books. So for all of the lecturing about, This is important for people to learn their history. They've been fighting that fight here, so please stand with them and listen to them.
My name's Perry Matlock. I was born at SF General, south of the village of Chutchui. I grew up in the Richmond district near 6th Avenue in Anza. Anza was a terrorist. South of the village of Petlenuk. I worked at the Moscone Center in the area of Sitlintok. I volunteer at the San Francisco Zoo, north of the village of Omporomo, all in Yalamu Uramai of the Ohlone Nation. I was not taught this in any of the public school systems. I went to Washington High School from 1977 to 1980. I did not graduate. I come from a fatherless family, and I also come from a family that does not own real estate, very working class. Please get rid of this mural. George Washington was a terrorist. Let's just face it. He's a terrorist by today's standards. Listen to the Ohlone people. Where's their Holocaust Center? Where are people going to learn about the first Ohlone person murdered by the Imperial Spanish in what's now the Presidio in 1776 December? Where's their Holocaust Center? Why aren't we learning about their story? Get rid of the mural. The Ohlone people, the native people here are telling you to get rid of it. Listen to them. When are people going to listen to the Ohlone people? This land belongs to the Ohlone Nation.
My daughter's mother and I had the chance to tour the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. about a month ago. It was a somber and heartbreaking experience. One of the most disturbing things we saw was a replica of parts of a synagogue that had been destroyed by Nazis. It really drove home the religious history of what was lost. I do not equate the removal of these murals with what I saw in the Holocaust Museum. The museum was built with input from the Jewish community, and you are resoundingly hearing tonight from the voices of impact communities that they do not want these murals. As the parent of African American students, I am very concerned about the murals in their current place. I understand Arnautoff's intention when he painted the murals, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. My African American children don't need a mural to remind them of the injustices that were inflicted on their ancestors. In fact, they're still experiencing plenty of injustices in modern-day San Francisco. The murals absolutely have a place in our history, but these historical artifacts should be available to be viewed in an environment that isn't disruptive and traumatizing to the school.
My name's Julie Roberts-Fung. I'm also a public school parent and want to thank the Native and Black leaders who put in hours of work to take down these racist and traumatizing murals that reinforced my children's own implicit bias. I want to thank you for reclaiming your story and deciding how you want it told, not by white artists. This is a moment for all of us to ask ourselves which side of history we choose to be on, and as a white American and a great-grandchild of Russian immigrants, I say take it down. Many of us are wearing shirts that say take it down, that connects this moment to Bree Newsom taking down the Confederate flag from the Capitol building. But before her, take it down was the chant of 250 black students at Washington High School in the 1960s. You can see that in the historical archives. To our board, this is your Bree Newsom moment. You know what this historical moment calls for. It's time to take it down, paint over this mural, and give our youth a clean state. Let no other generation of students say they will meet by the dead Indian. For those willing to use court systems built upon and intended to protect white supremacy, willing to force the district to spend scarce dollars, I ask, is this the story you want to tell your grandchildren?